Did any of that make sense? I'm yapping again. We're off to a fantastic start. Hello friends, foes, and those still under review. Welcome to my very first YouTube video. Now some of you may be familiar with me already. You may have followed me over here from TikTok or Instagram, but if that's not the case, hi, my name is Brienne. Most people call me Brie. I talk about books. In order to introduce myself a little bit and for us to kind of get to know one another a little bit better, I thought I would do the BookTube Newbie Tag. Let's get started. First question, why did you start this channel? I feel like everybody else has such moving and inspirational reasons for why they started their channels. Mine is just that I ran out of time on TikTok. I'm a bit of a yapper, so the 10-minute time limit is just not enough for me. You know, I started on TikTok in the first place just because I wanted a space to talk to people about books and make new book friends. You know, you live in a small town, you're kind of limited in like the number of people that you know that like the same kind of stuff as you. I've met so many wonderful people on that app who like the same kind of stuff that I do, so it's been really nice to kind of like branch out and make some new friends. Unfortunately, a lot of them are American, and with the fate of TikTok being a little bit uncertain and me not liking the Instagram app so much, this kind of gives me a place to like continue talking to people who have the same kind of interest as me and not have to break things into a part two. I just cannot stand them, so hopefully this gives me a little bit more freedom that way. Did any of that make sense? I'm yapping again. We're off to a fantastic start. So second question, what are some fun and unique things you can bring to BookTube? I don't know if I personally have fun and unique things that I can bring to this community, but because I have a tendency to read like literally whatever I can get my hands on, I have a lot of unique recommendations. I don't just talk about the same 10 books that are on repeat on Instagram and TikTok all the time. Don't get me wrong, I love those too. My tastes in general are very broad. I don't know if that counts or not. 3, what are you most excited for about this new channel? Honestly, I think I'm most excited about the people. That's one of the best things that's come out of TikTok for me so far. I feel like it limits you if you only are interacting with your own thoughts about a book. I find it's really useful and helpful to get other people's perspectives. You know, I don't think you can ever have enough book friends in your life. So yeah, I'm most excited for the people. I'm also very excited to get to experiment with long form content a little bit. So this is all, I've only ever been on Instagram and TikTok. So this is very new to me. So I'm excited to kind of expand my skill set a little bit there as well. Question 4, why do you love reading? So reading's always been a pretty big part of my life. My mom's a big reader, so I grew up with my mom reading to me. My gran used to read to us endlessly when she came to visit us when I was younger. So this is kind of like a family activity. Like I know this series is a little bit controversial right now, but my mom used to read to me and my sisters on like trips to Saskatchewan and stuff in the car. You know, that's how I experienced the Harry Potter series for the first time, is she would read that series specifically to me and my sisters. And then when we were done with that series, it was other books that we'd pick like as a family. It was a really good way for her to get us to shut up and be quiet and like get along for half an hour or so. And I spent a lot of time in the library in junior high school, because school was not a very fun time for me. So I used books quite as a bit of escapism for that. So yeah, I didn't read nearly as much, you know, in my mid-20s, I guess. And then I turned 28 and was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. I had nothing to do while I was sitting around waiting for a diagnosis. You know, my inflammation was so bad that I was basically couch-bound for several months. And this was all during COVID too, so I was working from home, so I had that to distract me for a little bit. But after that, outside of working hours was more difficult, so I picked up ACOTAR. And that was kind of the series that got me back into reading again. And since then, I have been back to reading whatever I can get my hands on. Between reading and knitting, that's how most of my time gets spent recently. Question 5, what book or series got you into reading? I think there was 3 series that I can remember for sure that I know that I like. The Animal Arc series, Pony Club, and the Jewel Princesses. I was obsessed with all 3 of those when I was like, you know, old enough to read a chapter book and stuff. That's what I remember anyway. All right, number 6, what questions would you ask your favorite booktubers? Honestly, has less to do with BookTube and more like the social media aspect of it. How do you style your flat lays? because I cannot do it to save my life. Everybody else has these like beautiful aesthetic shots of like what they're reading and their coffee and like where they're reading. Mine look like a pile of stuff. That is not a skill that I have. I am not a particularly artsy person, and I know everybody has to start somewhere. So like, where did you start? Like, how did you learn to do all of the pretty stuff? Because I feel like I am floundering a little bit. All right, question 7. What challenges do you think starting a BookTube channel will be the hardest to overcome? Task initiation, I guess. Yeah, just sitting down to do the damn thing is probably going to be the toughest part for me, because I've been on TikTok for a year, and you'd think that I would be over it by now, but like I still have a little bit of imposter syndrome in the back of my brain. So like I'll finish a project and be like, but what if it doesn't do well? What if people don't like it? What if it looks dumb? So yeah, that's going to be one of the biggest challenges. The other one for sure is making myself be consistent with an upload schedule, because like I'm not a horribly busy person, but I feel like the day just gets away from me very easily. So that's going to be a struggle for sure, is just like making sure that I make time for myself to sit and, Okay, so question 9, where do you read? Honestly, I will read wherever. Most of the time it's in my bed because it's right before I go to sleep. If it's in the winter, my parents have a wood stove, so it's a nice little cozy place to curl up and read, especially if like the Christmas tree is up. If it's in the summer, out by my garden, I have one of those nice lounger chairs, so I can just kind of stretch out and read in the sun, and that's always nice. I listen to a lot of audiobooks in the car if I'm driving somewhere. Basically, wherever I have some free time and a book in my hand, I'm reading there. Last but not least, question 10. What kind of books do you like to read? Like I said, literally anything I can get my hands on. There's a couple of caveats to that. I'm not the biggest fan of contemporary romance. It's not the worst thing in the world. I honestly don't really know why I don't like contemporary romance that much. I think it's just the romance aspect of it. Like, I don't mind contemporary settings if they are, for example, a thriller or a horror novel. Those are fine. The only romance novels I really read that are in contemporary settings are more like a dark romance, and that's not to say that I don't like romance. I do quite enjoy a good romance novel, but they're more fantasy romance, or I read quite a lot of sentient object and monster romance. I usually read those if my brain needs a break, because I find it's quite a bit easier to shut your brain off if you're already suspending your disbelief a little bit. And there are some that have like surprisingly good stories outside of the smut, so there's that. On the other hand, horror, mysteries, and thrillers are quite good if I feel like my brain needs a little bit of a workout. I love a good, whodunit, Agatha Christie, that kind of thing. I will read nonfiction every once in a while, but I'm not a big like self-help person or anything like that. They're usually very science-based, or they're true crime, that kind of thing. I'll read the odd biography if it's a person that I'm like super interested in, but yeah, those ones are kind of few and far between. So yeah, that brings us to the end of the Book Talk Newbie Tag. Thanks for sticking around this far. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. I have some things planned that I'm very excited for, so I hope you'll stick around. So yeah, y'all have a great rest of your day. Stay safe and enjoy your book. Bye!